I'm sure you all have people in your life that you might think of as like the egoistic, what do we say, the unreasonable egoistic people who are not practicing compassionate consciousness. And they are invested in being in the jackal world. They want to be judgmental. They want to get control. They want to dominate. They like it. They buy into it. And that's how they live. So I think the question is, if you are practicing nonviolent communication, or if you have different values, where does that leave you? So in any given interaction with said human, here's this human in front of you. And this person, you're carrying the evaluation that they are unreasonable and egoistic. Okay, so that's where we're going to begin. However it is. And you might be thinking of them as narcissistic, or you might be thinking of them as having some diagnosis that is capturing for you what it is that you're finding challenging with them. So the first thing you're going to notice is the evaluations and the labels and the enemy images that you will tend to develop about the other in order to try and capture what it is that is difficult for you about that person and communicate efficiently. Then you're going to slow down and you're going to try and figure out what exactly it is that this person does, doesn't do, says, doesn't say. You're going to ground yourself in micro moments. All right. And you're going to get very behavioral. So you can make a list on the one hand of all of my judgments, criticisms, evaluations, all of that. And you may want to like journal out for yourself. The problem with you, whoever random person is, you're so judgmental, you're so selfish, you don't take into consideration anybody's needs. It's always about you. All you want is control. You don't have the same values as me. I don't know how to connect with you. Whatever it is that's coming up for you, let your jackal go for a run. Let your judgmental voice get expressed. Get it all out so that you can see it and hear it. You want to be able to see and hear and love and embrace that part of you. And you want to get aware. And sometimes the way we get aware is one of the things we get aware of first is our judgmental nature. It's part of your protection system. So we don't other it and we don't send it into the shadows and we don't make it bad and wrong. We actually give it we meet its needs for self-expression, to put it in nonviolent communication terms. But we don't say it to the person because that would be repeating the cycle of violence. So we don't do that. We take responsibility for what is emerging in us and how we are perceiving and thinking. And we get it on paper so that I can start working with it as part of my work. Okay? Then I can take all of that and I start looking at all my judgments and I do the practice of translating every label, every diagnosis, every judgment into the underlying feelings and needs. Okay, first we do step one, which is we ground every judgment in an instance, the micro moment, what they said or did, what they didn't do, what they didn't say that I wish they had, whatever that behavioral thing is, I get them grounded. Then I take every judgment and I translate every judgment into the underlying feelings and needs that I'm having and a guess at what this other person might be feeling and needing that led them to do this thing or not do this thing, or say this thing or not say this thing. So I make two columns. So for example, I think you're narcissistic and selfish and egoistic and unreasonable. How am I going to translate that into the underlying feelings and needs? I'm going to think about what it is that they said or did, didn't say, didn't do. And then grounded in that, I'm going to say, okay, I felt what? Frustrated. I felt confused. I felt disoriented. What was I feeling in that moment? And what need of mine wasn't met? Perhaps I have a need for consideration. Perhaps I have a need to matter. Maybe I have a deeper need for understanding or connection or clarity. If we're talking about unreasonable and egoistic, like guesses that I would put around that, egoistic tells me that I'm experiencing this person as having the ability to care about themselves, but not necessarily about me. So maybe I have a need for more trust, that I matter equally, or that I'm also seen and heard, or that I'm also valued or considered in a decision. So I want to get very clear about what's coming up for me. What is the need that I'm having that I don't believe, my perception, my experience is that this need is not well cared for in this relational frame. And I'm not trusting that this person is caring for this need that I have. That's what I want to wake up to. I want to wake up to my observations, my feelings, my needs. Then I'm going to take some time and I'm going to empathize with this other person in my head, in my heart, in my body. And I'm going to imagine when they do this thing, when they don't tell me blah, 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 when they do say blah, 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 when they don't do blah, 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 when they do blah, blah, blah. In that moment, if it were me, how might I be feeling? What might I be needing? What would be going on with me that I would be doing that thing? You've got to find the part in you that would behave in the same exact way by imagining what would have to be going on in my life. Under what conditions would I be doing that? And you can imagine, I mean, I can think about times where I have said really mean and horrible or selfish things. And often it's because I've been feeling disconnected from myself. I've been feeling desperate. I have been feeling like I'm out of options and helpless. Like, what are the things that might be going on that would lead me to show up in that way? And what are the needs that I might be having in that moment that would be driving that kind of behavior? So now I've listened to my jackal voice. I've made everything explicit. I've gotten as aware as I can of my judgmental, controlling, fearful self. And I've listened to her. I've seen her. I've heard her. I've loved her up. I've embraced her. I've met her needs. I'm tending well to her. I'm not suppressing her and telling her she's bad and wrong and she's not nonviolent. I'm saying, hey, come here, little violent one. Let's work with you. I love you loads. Okay. Then I'm grounding it in specific things that happened or didn't happen, because that's what I'm going to use to establish shared reality. Then I'm bringing myself back to life by really getting aware of what I'm feeling and what I'm needing instead of just all of my judgmental narratives. Then I'm finding a place of shared humanity where I'm imagining under what circumstances might I be doing that too. And I, at least in my own inner being, am building a bridge to rehumanizing this other person. Once I've done that, that's like, a few years of personal work in just me, lots of therapy work. It might be 1 hour, it might be 3 years, who knows? It might be a lifetime. It depends on the circumstances. It takes us all different amounts of time. I give myself all the time that I need until I'm feeling my nervous system re-regulating. Because if I try to have the conversation while I'm activated, it's going to go differently than when I've done some work to re-regulate, to ground, to self-connect, to come alive, to become choiceful. And then you always have a choice. Do I want to connect with this person, or do I want to disconnect from this person? Is this a case of boundary setting, or is this a case of really collecting them and going to bat for more connection and relationality? You are allowed to choose to disconnect if after doing all of that, you realize this is beyond my capacity. If I keep interacting with this human, I keep getting hurt. I can't keep myself safe and protected when I make myself available to particular dynamics. And the wisest choice for me here is to create more distance between myself and this dynamic. That is a legitimate strategy, and there are ways of doing that are nonviolent and compassionate. Or I might decide, no, I value this person, and I really think if we could both be working on this, and if I can try a few more things, maybe if I made a clearer request, maybe if I try to empathize with them a little bit more, maybe if I entered their world or really helped them enter my world. Like if this is a person in a relationship that really matters, there's a million things you can try that increase the likelihood that they may step into the space with you. But ultimately, you are not responsible for their growth or whether or not they step into that space. And if you want relationships that are based on mutuality and shared values of compassion or nonviolence or back and forth, and you would like your needs met in a particular way, sometimes you realize that other people don't yet have the desire, the willingness, or the capacity to meet your needs. And the most nonviolent thing you can do is leave them alone and let them be who they are. Because it becomes a version of domination when you keep trying to make them be who you want them to be. Sometimes there's more wisdom and more love in understanding who and what someone is and how they work and what they do and don't want, and adjusting. You go get your needs met elsewhere. If somebody can't meet your needs for consideration, doesn't want to consider you, they don't think you matter and they don't value you, and there's no amount of how you're going to show up and communicate that's going to get them to value you, know that there's a point where you realize that and you know that, and you very gently disconnect without making them bad and wrong. They're in a different place, and their job on this planet isn't to be an object to meet our needs, and nor are we an object to meet other people's needs. So that's how you begin navigating that relationally.